Rip-a-dip-dip-doo, doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Re-doo-doo-doo-doo-boo-boo-boo. Yeah. Well, if you don't get over the top here, IWM, we're going to have some problems. No key. Good morning, yo. Good morning, Booksy. Good morning. Good morning. Sorry I'm a little late. I was playing a game with my kiddo and lost track of time. Alright, let's see what happens today. My expectations today are pretty low, so we will see. It's running. It's in the same basket ETF as GME. Cost. Popping off. Yeah, I looked at it last night. Here it is. 685. Yeah, there's a runner for you. I don't really have any TA on this, so I can't really tell you where I think it might stop. We could just look just for, wow, it's up 50%. That's good, huh? You think GME will be soon today or tomorrow? I mean, I wouldn't expect anything today because today's a half day. People are on vacation, you know, already. It's going to be one of those low volume market weeks. Friday might even be worse. All right, so this is a falling S curve. This is a reactive move 1, buy back in, reactive move 2. So maybe I'm looking at this too small. No, I'm looking at it right. So this is pretty much what I'm expecting for AMC and GME, isn't it? Right? I mean, like, if we're looking at this and we're trying to be objective about it, I would say that this is the first big push, buyback in, second big push. So it seems like we were right, at least in some part, that there should be a second big push. We were right about the double top. I say should be. That's a dangerous place to be. You don't really want to be talking about woulda, shoulda, couldas, but yeah, I think we were right though. I think that the idea of that second push matters. They may not care that much about certain securities. This has quite a bit of volume, you know. They may not care that much about certain securities running on a holiday week, but they probably want as many eyes on AMC and GME as possible. So, yeah. Well, let's see if we can give it the same treatment. It's at 530 right now. Unless we get over 532, I'm not really super interested. So I've got a marker set here at 540. GME did jump the little creek here, and it looks like it ended up coming back above, even though it had a drop. I honestly can't tell what's going on. There might be a little gap there. Cost has no options. I got you. That's not what I meant, but we'll look at it. Operators hate AMC. AMC did pull something off like costs. Did you forget? We ran like 300% in like a few days. I mean, it was like 200%, but still. I think it's a matter of like volume and stuff, yeah, like how things are playing out. So this is like your main jump here. Finally found a support. There's the secondary jump here, probably. And that's where you get like a bigger move. Actually, it looks kind of low. It's more like a GME chart, isn't it? It has like that slow burn down, really similar to GME actually. Very weak for what it looks like. What could be a big wedge. I mean, I would suggest it's a falling wedge. It's a bit odd because it doesn't have as many strong touch points as like GME does, but I think it's a falling wedge. So let's see here. Maybe 13 bucks. So this could have a bit more to go. I think it's heading back towards this level up here around 13. Maybe right there, 1288. That's the target in mind. So this is definitely a mover. I don't have any liquidity. I can't buy into it. I'm not really sure I'd want to on a run like this. But I think, yeah, I think it's very possible this thing could see 100%. 100%. It's a difficult thing because, you know, you're in the middle of a big fat run. It's like, well, 100% is a lot, but do I really want to take a risk that it's going to not have a big pullback or whatever? I don't know. Yeah, I mean, if you got in at like 6 before it hit the top here, I wouldn't be worried. I'd just kind of watch it go and just be careful. I'm just thinking out loud, like because I'm not in it, I don't know if I'd want to chase it. It could have another 100% in it. The wedge breakout here to me has that target. I don't have any other confirmation of that right now. I'm just looking at it big picture, and I don't know. Let's see if we can find a better, let me look at the weekly, better angle at this. Yeah, maybe. I think it could easily get back up to 12. That doesn't even look that high when you look at the grand scheme of things. There's another potential resistance here right at 960 because that's a previous top. So there's a couple levels I'd be careful about. It looks like 960. They're kind of equidistant. It's like a midpoint between the previous. Yeah, it's probably just an equal. So more like 9. So I look at 9 and then 1288. I do think that's, I mean, it is a creek jump. There's no doubt about it in my mind. That's a decent move. Like right here. Or it's a creek retest. So potentially, if that's an SOS after a spring, you could just see it come back up and just keep going. But from a Bulkowski standpoint, there's really only maybe enough energy here to get you to 1288, and then you could be in a position where you're sort of chopping for a while. Because the thing is, like, when we look at big giant moves like this, it's easy to look big picture and say, oh, it's going to go way, way up because it looks like an SOS with a backup, for example. But you got to keep in mind, like, the energy required to do that, like the causation required to do that is quite high. So you need a lot of accumulation to pull off that kind of move. So I'm just of the opinion that you got to be careful, and you don't want to be in a position where you're like overzealous about something like that. Something like bad. It's just be careful. I think it could take a lot longer here than maybe anticipated. That's just based on like waves. Yeah, this is what I wanted to see. So I'm trying to find what we maybe call like a hook value. So from here, what I'm gathering is that the hook value on that first push up sent you almost to the top, but it didn't quite get you there. So I'm on the weekly. This is not a low time frame. Yeah, so potentially there's quite a bit of space here to trade. I'll do another one on the moving averages, but I actually think it's actually looks like it's pretty close. So maybe we only get to like 9 on this one. It's almost up 80% on the day, so. I guess big picture, I would just say, hey, you know, maybe yeah, it's halted. Maybe close. You see this right here? These is 2 potential like hook values. I don't think this one looks like it ends till, I mean, you could be another day or so. This is a weekly, so it would have to kind of top off. So again, maybe 9, maybe 1288. That's about as far as I'd probably push it for me personally. If I were in the play, I don't think I would have another target in mind. Because this looks great, and you're like, oh, it's going to fly to the moon. But that's not really how this works. You know, you've got what seems like a skewed chart. You know, and the reaction here, to me, it looks like it's already been met. So I might look backwards and see what's going on back here. Because this could be an indication of like a bigger wave. Yeah, I don't know, man. There's nothing about this that looks really bad. It does kind of give you the vibe that it might come back up to the 30s. It is what it is. You're in it or you're not, you know. The best time to be in this was down here at $2. There's still potential for a move here, so you've got a bit of space, a couple of resistances. Yeah, I think that's about as far as I would push my luck. I just don't know the stock, and I don't follow it, so to me it's not a, I don't have the history behind it, you know. Yeah, well, that's that. Best of luck to you guys if you're in it. I'll keep it on the standby, I guess, just to sort of see if it makes any new marks. But I don't, like I said, I don't really have a lot of TA on it, and I could spend all morning kind of messing with it, but it's a lower volume push. RSI is pushed higher, which is fine. Thus far, I think it's got space. It could go up to 9. It's already moved like a 80% on the day, so expect pullbacks. Just comparing this to what I thought might happen on AMC, this looks really good because this is kind of what we wanted to see on AMC, but the chart itself is very different. Would you call the MACD on the weekly AMC bullish divergence? Yeah, I think we looked at that yesterday. I'll check it out. Yeah, it's like rising. There was a hidden divergence on RSI. So yesterday we didn't get these targets that I called out, so we'll see what happens today. Maybe we'll get there. Maybe we won't. I'm not going to hold my breath for it. I said that yesterday. I was like, you know, it doesn't happen, doesn't happen. But it looks good. I mean, it's hard to be timing-wise perfect. If you get something slightly off, this really delayed yesterday down here, but so far we've gotten 1, 2, so I would expect to maybe get to 3 here. I don't think that's a bad call out on my part. I think the timing is just whack. I didn't have good timing. But But I still think those are the levels you'd be looking at on a reactive move. If it can't get over 204, it's going to get stuck. Yeah. So there it is. It's all the way up at 866. So it's pushing those levels. It's like I said, 922 and then 1288 for costs. Okay. If it got beyond 12, excuse me for yelling. If it got beyond 1288, you're really just looking at this area at like 20, because at that point you're just looking for that next shelf. So the levels are pretty straightforward in terms of like the squeeze momentum. So once again, came above 532 and failed to hold it. It looks like it's trying to find a support. Last night it went low, and I don't have the after hours on, but it went low here. So I think there was a finishing of maybe that S curve. I was asked about the weekly. I'll just look at the weekly just to see the MACD, but is that divergent? Yeah, I mean it is. So we talked about how this looked a lot like, excuse me, kind of what happened here, where you're getting like a long-term like build out down, where the MACD is kind of struggling to come back above. We did kind of do this analysis yesterday because I had marked it off, and we were talking about how it was making like a long-term like effort to kind of push up here, and then secondary effort to push up. We're kind of seeing something similar. It has yet to cross. So my thought is that it's a lot like what happened in September of 2020. Where you're probably going to get an initial cross, and then we're going to see how low we go. So I think if we get another push, this is my theory, I think if we get one more big push to the upside, that's going to be like a near cross kind of thing, and then we're going to have a pullback to wherever, and then I think we're going to be in good shape to at that point go. And it might be like a November thing. It could take a few more months. So one more big push, one more decent pullback, could be pretty considerable, all things considered. So we did the chart yesterday, and I did a few different versions of this. I'm not going to do them all again, but this was one that we looked at. This would be very similar to what happened back here in terms of the build out. Even in terms of the creeks, it was like really close to the same things. So that would be a big November squeeze. And that's a possibility, but it really would depend on where we are in October. It's also possible this doesn't go below previous bottoms, maybe only to 3 just to fill the gap, and that would be really strong. It really doesn't make a huge difference to me personally, because I'm probably not going to play the downside much. If I play a downside, it would just be from top down here. I don't really want to do that, because like usually the volatility gets destroyed and puts get killed too. So to be honest with you guys, I've been thinking about it. I think if this runs and MPW lags, I'm probably going to just flip my money, my profits from one to another, because I don't really believe that AMC is going to keep running right now. I just don't. I could be wrong, but it's like you got to do what you got to do. Everybody's going to have their own strategies. My strategy right now is to kind of take, if I can get money from like something like a cost or something and get a huge amount of profit, I'm probably going to put it in another one that I think is prepared to run. So prepared. So anyways, this is what I imagine is very likely, because, and this makes sense because this goes up into mid next year. And that was sort of the earliest I could see us hitting a high. And then I think we might even do like a secondary push. The wave is really good. The cross is good. The build out for the creeks, like the way this creek built out and the way this creek is built out, all of it makes sense. It's just follow through, So I think the next push would be a push to go back to hit this midline more proper like. And I think it'll be probably as good as we can get it. It's going to be somewhere between 14 and like 18, which makes sense. So kind of like your costs, where you're getting like a secondary push up that goes higher. This one didn't pull back as far, and it's a different chart. The levels are different. Don't get me wrong. I don't think it's impossible that AMC just runs, but all things considered in this whole shenanigan, all this craziness, I still don't put it past the operator to like bring us back down. Maybe we don't. Somebody mentioned yesterday, maybe we don't go below 6 again. I think that's a possibility because 6 is being built out as a possible support, but this is all sort of speculative until we see the next move. Once we get the next move, we're going to have a better idea of the setup. Right now, we're just doing the best we can to approximate it. And I've already done as much as I can, I think. So I did like 2 different macro charts, and they basically were the exact same thing. I mean, you can say that they're essentially the same build out. Like, it doesn't really matter how you chart it at this point, which is good. So, yeah. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to monitor for, like a weekly cross on the MACD to over 0 would be good, but we know that back in 2020, before it did that, it double topped along the top. For us, that's like 14. And the second top in 2020, the second double top region in 2020, it pushed up to the top and it went a little higher and it pushed the creek up. But it also checks like an outer creek. And that's exactly what I'm kind of expecting if we go up again, is to check the outer creek we did not check. So like, it was still a top though, right? And that's the thing is like, I don't have a lot of strong inclination that this is some kind of super bullish thing until we see that. So this looks kind of bad on 1 hour. 1 hour looks like it's struggling. It's compressing. It could be like this, where you're getting like a compression before a big push up. And that's what I'm hoping here. I think, what was it, like 4 hour on MACD was about to cross or something. No, it was actually crossing 0, right? What was it? We looked at it yesterday. Was it daily? Oh, the daily's having a cross up. So the daily's having a bullish cross up. This usually leads, we went back and looked at a couple examples, 2 past examples from recent times. This cross, if it holds, usually leads to a 20% run, even if it's like only a temporary cross up like this one was. The day after we had the cross, we had like a 20% move. So do I think that happens into a Friday? I don't know, on a holiday week, probably debatable, maybe not. But what was interesting was that the 20% move confirms the 630 target, because if you look at where 20% is here, if this can hold for another day or so, I think we're going to get a 20% move up to the top, which again, yay, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, like, so far so good, I guess. We just say that, so we don't sound like a bunch of, well, I don't sound like an arrogant prick or something. Well, Booksy, because your target's hit, you're so arrogant. Yeah. Sorry, guys. I pick on myself a little bit, mostly because you hear that from other people. That people have come in here and been like, typical Booksy, full of himself. I'm like, okay. I mean, you got to take your winners. If you got a winner, you got a winner. If you did it right and you get the money, then just take it. It doesn't have to be more complicated than that. So the worst thing I guess that could happen here is this crosses back down and we end up rejecting somehow around either 532 or near 6. But the daily looks good, in my opinion, for a potential big reversal here. So yeah, I had mentioned that yesterday, and I think we looked at it a little more carefully across different time frames, but hourly and 2 hour need to kind of hold. They're still sort of bullish. I haven't really checked RSI today. You guys are like, I'm so tired of RSI, Booksy. You're so bearish when you talk about RSI. Yes and no. I mean, like 1 hour, 2 hour, 4 hour daily, they all look okay. They're kind of like 1 hour and 2 hour, we're getting overbought, but there's possibility here. Like you can see on the 1 hour, this makes sense because we're getting like a really tight compression. So if it broke back above, like this would be like finding support and breaking back above, this breaks back above. That's one way to read the indicator. We've seen this before on like these kind of squeeze moments where you see how the RSI is broken down. You see that? It happened right back here on June 24th, or excuse me, June 4th. The RSI broke down on the 1 hour, the MACD compressed. This broke down on the 1 hour, MACD compressed. And again, this is interesting because this is the same region where the 4 hour had a cross. So this is the same exact place I use as an example to talk about the 20% move because the 4 hour was having a cross. So it's interesting to me because it's very similar. I'd be curious if it didn't end the same way, you know, what changed. But from where I stand, that's very, very similar setup. So I think the extra 20% here is all but in the books. You know, it's like it's basically just ready to go. We're just waiting for that last little push here. And I mean, not surprisingly, we're kind of sitting on the level that we were maybe that you need to be. I mean, this is the next shelf. So all these things are lining up pretty well. Like you've got a lot of similarity in the 1 hour and 4 hour for another 20% move. The waveform gives you an extra like at least 15 to 20% here. You're going back to the top. I mean, technically, yeah, like this is a creek check. It could be the end of the move. We've talked about that before. Like there's a possibility you just distribute over 6. Not everything is like always perfect, you know. I don't want it to sound like it's a guaranteed move up, but my thought is if that happened, I'm gonna have to sort of make sure I'm prepared next week to see like what would the breakdown look like, you know, like because I would want to know like where is that failure most visible, I suppose, and is there a place where we can sort of say, yeah, this is it, this is the point of no return. And that's not to discourage anybody. I'm just thinking out loud. I still think if IWM makes the right strides here, it's not stopping here. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm of the opinion that if it makes the right moves, it should be going up and breaking up above recent highs. So that's my opinion, but I think the build out's there. It just needs to happen. I think we can get back up to this pocket. You'd be in good shape for that extra leg up. So GME, again, kind of talked about it very, very, very briefly. It didn't hold the creek jump yesterday. It pushed up resistance, which is fine. I mean, that's what this is. But it dropped back below like last minute. So there might be a little gap there even. It looks like it. There's a gap between opening and close. So let's see, closed at 23.99, opened at 24.08. So that's a 9-cent gap, and then the low is 24.05. So you've still got a 6-cent gap down there. Never underestimate the power of a tiny gap. Like that's a saying. I just think that's interesting, and maybe may not mean a whole lot. It could just mean that maybe we need to come back and build another support here. This could become a range above 23.80. So what about the rest of this, Booksy? So we're not going down low. You were just wrong about how low we went. I mean, never say never, right? So since this gap is filled and now you've got a gap below, if you did push back down, technically if you happen to go back for that, you're losing this original trend, which means it's like a cross trend, right? You're like losing it on like a wave. So then you drop that. And then you have the creek here, which is good. That's for support. My bigger concern is this other trend, which I think folks might want to debate it, but I have a lot of parallels that run at the same angle going up. And so I would be a little concerned if it dropped back down. And I don't think, again, that means you're necessarily going back low, but it's always possible, you know. If this lasted, for example, if a downtrend lasted till Tuesday, then yeah, you could go back down there. On the whole, do I think that that's likely? I'll say this: if we find support at this lower gap, so again, this is kind of if then, at 24 bucks, right? Where the gap is, we fill the gap. If we find support and then we come back above 25.05, that's this level, I don't think we're going to go back down. I think at that point, you build support here, you're almost perfectly set up. So I'm really looking at this as the move. It's like anything else down here is kind of extra. It's just more trading, you know, like more time. The move to me is from 25 up to 29.72. So that's really all I can say at this point. I think it measures out well. I think it makes sense to me on the big picture that you come back up here. Obviously, it's taken longer than I wanted, than I expected perhaps. This could be thought of as kind of a spring. So if there's or a double spring even, so if there's a retest, again, like maybe it doesn't go below 23.64, that'd be a really good support. I think that's probably a good one because that would be like us confirming that that's going to be support. So how could you accomplish everything if you were going to accomplish it? I would think you could come down to this pocket. This could be your today move even, because Wednesday's a short day today, and then Friday, I know that max pain's at 23 something, but if I'm getting ready to run, I might do this into Monday, and that would accomplish everything. All of this is very delayed, of course, but that would accomplish everything that you're trying to accomplish here. So I feel like it could be a potentially really good setup if it did that. Makes sense? And then I don't think if that happens, you need to come back down. So this would change. It'd be probably more like this. So this is one way to kind of check all the boxes and get you in a position for strength Monday. This would be really strong. So if we close over 25 this week, Booksy's thumbs up, I think, for a potential big move. There's another outer creek here, so this kind of makes sense. It's all intersecting right there at that like cross section right there. So maybe red day today in the end. We'll see. Green Friday, not huge green, just green enough to get you up here. And then Monday, I mean, because Friday could be a huge day, but just for the sake of argument, you might say that Monday isn't, I mean, I guess Friday could be pretty big this way and have like a big retracement into the close. That would probably work pretty well. And then Monday is really the bigger day. That's the best way out, I think, just to kind of get everything that you need to get. This would give me confirmation on this creek that it's broken. This would give me the gap fill. This would give me a retest on the floor. And then you get a jump over the next struggle point, maybe a higher high. What if we don't gap fill? I don't know, man. I don't think it has to, but I think that it's better to go ahead and get it. I would have preferred they just dropped it early. Then you could just get it out of the way. So it's kind of interesting. So MPW did a little bit of both. It's kind of like was sort of doing a dive after hours. I think it went even lower, but it's jumped now. So it might leave it behind. So it's now it's above this other creek. It can't go back down through this and still expect to be bullish. So if If it's bearish, it might come back through the creek. That's always a possibility. But if it's bullish, and this is the trajectory, by the way. This is not a line I drew for this. So this is looking really good. So that's the trajectory out. So if it's bullish, we should start seeing it make advances. Because this is M1, M2, and M2 crossed. Yeah, it crossed over. It died? I was just joking. Booksy said it crossed over. It's dead. I'm thinking that's probably the shape right there. It's a weird one. But when it advances, it usually rises while it's going. So it's a jump over this, basically, this trend down. Which on the 6 minute, it's just a 6 minute downtrend on RSI. It's not a huge deal, but this has been all during that downward action. So you really do want to see it kind of reverse on the underlying indicators. You want to see that reversal. So far it's looking pretty good. That to me looks like an adequate M1 and then an M2 jump. And I mean, I'm not saying it's going to explode, but maybe. It's in a position now where it's sort of just doing what we would expect it to do, which is it comes up to that initial drop. It already happened, so it probably already filled the gap. So it's going to have a secondary motion. And, I mean, frankly, again, it's like, if it can kind of make the jump here, it's going to go. So if it can get up above 415, it's probably just gone. And that's all I'm going to say about it. I think it's right around there. That's all I'll say about it for now. Oh, geez, what just happened to AMC? She dumped. It's going down. Not good. So that hourly is crossing down. That candle's finished. That first candle of the day is finished. So that's not good. That's a bear signal. Bears are taking advantage for sure. They're dumping it. I'd love to say it wasn't expected, but I couldn't have squawked any more annoyingly about, oh gosh, about that silly RSI being overcooked. It's not good. It's just been super crappy. Like the RSI has been just absolutely garbage coming into this top. So that's a really ugly sell down. So there's a couple things that could be the case here. To me, it looks like a classic cat ear top. We got push over the high and then another push trying to advance and it fails. But a lot of it will be dependent on the bottoms. And this bottom, at least in regular trading hours, didn't come below that initial support. So I'm inclined to think it could be just a spring, like a late flush in order to kind of get liquidity moving for you. Take advantage of the off day and get some downside here like that level. There's another wider creek. You can see the red line I've got. It's pretty much in the same pocket right here. The biggest kind of, I guess, crappy part about this is the uptrend may be gone. I'll go to the widest point possible, which is like right there on the 28th. Yeah, it's pushing it. So it doesn't look like it's going to hold. I don't know, man. This doesn't really faze me that much though, because frankly, like the way this was building out, it was looking like bad. I was annoyingly pessimistic on it the other day because I thought it needed a bigger pullback and we just weren't getting it. We went back down to 5 and that was it. And then it tried to advance again. And I've talked about this 532 frequently as like a danger zone. It might very well be that we are kind of mirroring out from here, some kind of a head and shoulder action. So, no, I told you so's. I'm not saying that, but I did tell you. I had that fear on Tuesday. You know, I think it was first thing after Monday open, or after Monday looking at Tuesday, I was like, I don't see how we, late Monday, I guess it was, I was like, I don't see how we can continue like this without some kind of a good reset. So, a couple things. So, like, number one, I guess I would say is like, the levels do matter, and they are important, but a lot of the stuff that I look at is the waves and the creeks. The levels are super important. But the waves and creeks are important to me. And I think this one right here, that push up, that's kind of your first major creek. And it's pretty low. The other thing that kind of bugs me is this guy. So this ascending one. So if you were paying attention when I was talking about this the other day, I said that this is kind of one of those areas where you could potentially experience like a hook. Because if it stopped here, you could like hook back down and essentially it's like done. That's not what I'm saying is happening, but I'm saying like that could happen. So I was like thinking about that, like, well, that could happen, you know. So I think this trend is like gone. I think it's kaput. The other thing was that these are cat ears. I mean, if you look at it objectively, it's pretty easy to tell what this is. Even on any other indicator, it looks like the cat ears. Because it's rising, it kind of gives you the appearance, gives it a sense of like, oh, it's not really that, right? But it is. So I think that MACD, obviously, and RSI kind of give you the hint. But it's definitely there. So like any wave, what you would do is just kind of look at the cross and see where that is. And you can see there's the 4 top, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's the hook. It failed to break. So by default, when it fails to break, it goes low. It's just waveform analysis. So looking back at it, it's hard to tell on the RSI unless you're looking at the, I don't know, I guess unless you're looking at the, kind of moving average. Let's see. It's pretty ugly. I think it's just an indicator cool off. I really do. I know it sounds like a silly thing. I know the indicators don't run, the markets don't run for the indicators, but I think it's the indicator was showing you that there was a problem. There was an imbalance of buying to selling, and it was going on way too long. And it couldn't hold. So it's basically hooked at this point. Here. So, yep, it's ugly. It's ugly. So that didn't hold either, so I'm gonna get rid of that one. It's not, didn't even provide any support. None of these did really. Yeah. I mean, you can't discount the fact that this was an area that you've heavily distributed against before. Like, I knew sellers were going to show up here, you know. But the good news is you remember what we talked about over here with that acceleration? And I think I mentioned the exact same things back here, is that you had a small M cross and then you had a backup. And I think we went through this fairly thoroughly, but just to recap, like the idea of this crossing over and then having like some kind of a pullback is absolutely normal. And when this was happening, I was expecting it to come down to like 464, right? And it didn't happen that way, but I was like, well, it could come back to 464, you know. When we took off here, I said, yeah, I mean, really, if this broke down, this is what I did the other day. I said, if this broke down from here, you could be heading back down to 484. And then I said, even further, I got rid of these markers, right? I want people to be freaking out. But so you could even go to 464, really. Because in reality, like, what is that 484 now? It's probably like a halfway point on this move, you know. And there's nothing really bad about a retracement. 470 is this other floor. That's the retest. We were talking about maybe GME doing a retest. If AMC had to do a retest, it'd probably come back to 470. You know, I mean, it's deep, but it could do it. And it's close to that head and shoulder mark, right? So if you're talking about an inverted head and shoulder movement, then coming back to like 470 or 460 seems almost inevitable. So I had talked about this on the other day and talked about the setup. Well, Shaw, it's not about stupid things messing up. Why is it doing that? It's pretty irritating. Yeah, I mean, it's not really about following anybody, you know. It's about this chart. This chart was super overcooked. So don't beat yourself up over it. It's not, it really doesn't matter that much in some ways, because it's like, I want to say we knew it was going to happen, but it kind of knew it was going to happen. Let me put it this way, though. If this had happened sideways, we would be in way worse shape. So if you're kind of like despairing right now because you're like, no, I didn't want a 2% pullback today, I would say, listen, these cat ears can set up however they want. And if they set up sideways, it's usually way worse. If this had set up sideways, what would have happened is during this pullback period, this happens on AMC all the time. So I know exactly what it would look like. If this had happened on our sideways period, we would have done this. And frankly, more than likely, we would have had some kind of last minute upthrust and then we would have died like down here. So the fact that we are where we are, it would have done this. Because it breaks this outer creek. This is the cat ear classic, right? Like it comes up, it forms like a bottom that looks like it's going to hold, then it starts wedging, and then it nosedives. If this had done this, we would have been down here. We would have been in the pits, in like the fours, and probably breaking below 430 right now. So the fact that we're up high, to me, that's good. Like that means we crossed up, not down. Doesn't sound like people are listening. Everybody's like upset. Oh, it's okay. Yeah, I don't know how else to tell you this except that the way that this happened is actually really good. So, for the most part, this is really good. Like, in the time that we've spent together, I think I've gone through this a few times. I really do feel like I've gone through it a few times. And maybe a few times isn't enough, but when AMC breaks down, the most typical way that happens is through what we call like a cat ear, right? And what you get is you get like an early sign of weakness, and then you end up with like a weird flat top looking thing. And you basically just fail like right at the end. You might kind of drop through here and then try again and you'll fail. And you end up with this kind of setup that what most people will say it looks like a wedge. This is the classic thing that happened to us way back in November of 2021. And this setup isn't the greatest, right? So it looks like a wedge, but it's really a distribution. And the ending result is usually pretty bad. If it's a failure to advance, you end up kind of falling flat on your face trying to fix these lines, okay? And I've talked about how if you look at that November setup, 2021, and you observe how that looks in relationship to what you see in January, the big difference is that the cross up happens up here and you get a pullback, and ultimately that's the big difference. Like, it's the same from a fractal standpoint. If you look at the comparison between the two, they look the same. They really do. The difference is that the M shape crosses up here and builds out to what should be an SOS. Do I think we SOS'd? No, not really. We didn't come above the top, but in some ways maybe that's better because I don't really want to push the top until I'm ready to go. That's just me. Is this a little distributive top? Yes, it is. But again, like, if this M shape crosses upward, that means that this pullback that happens, which always happens regardless of where the M is, it always happens. Always. Because it's a wave. So you're always going to have an up, down, period. Up, down, period. Like, I don't care where it is in the chart. I can show you the M's all over the place, right? Like, they're always there. Always. So just like back here, the up, down, or the up, down, like, even in this particular moment where it looked like it's advancing, it's still pulling back, right? At the end. It doesn't matter what level you look at it on. What matters is what's happening with the creek. And with the creek jump, that's positive. You know, if we went straight down and we hit 464, there'd be so much wailing and gnashing of teeth. People would say it's over. But in reality, that's not true, because if you went all the way back down to the bottom, yeah, it could be an inverted head and shoulder. But even if you went all the way back down to the bottom, at this point, you've still jumped the creek. The creek is not low. In my opinion, it's right there. It's like, it's pretty high. That's what the whole M shape is about. So it's absolutely possible that we come down low, and I made a case for it on like Monday. I said I didn't like it. I said that there was a possibility we come down low. This is not the only place you can go. There's other higher places you could stop. One of them we're kind of approaching right now, which is 5. 5 is a shelf. But I'll tell you, man, if we had done this stuff, I would be far more bullish or bearish than I am right now. I don't feel that bad right now. I'm kind of like, whatever. Saw that coming. We were already talking about it. I don't know why anybody would be like, why don't we keep running? Well, because we were super overbought. Like, I don't know. What bums me out, if anything, is that stuff we were talking about with the MACD. Like, just kind of that stuff could be very detrimental. Clearly, like, somebody saw that as a bear sign because they started selling it down really fast. So this giant turd isn't going past 15 this month. This thing won't go past 15 in 5 years. Good Lord. You guys, I'm not trying to be mean, but are you like actually listening to what I'm saying? Or are you just kind of like just jumping on just to say how bearish you are? Because I feel like I've been talking about how this is really bullish for like the last 15 minutes. And people are like, so this isn't going up? Sure. I'm just going to give you a thumbs up. Yep, it's not going up, not going to 15. May as well just decide what you want to do with your life. Move on. They're not trolls, though. These are people that are in here like all the time. They just only, I mean, it's like big was energy. Glenn Miller, though. We a bro. Oh, I get it's been 4 years. We're all in the same boat there. It's going to 10,000. All right. Let's work on a price, a good price target. Well, like 5. 5 is a shelf right now. It could provide a really good shelf for us. So when in doubt, you can try to use a channel. So what I would do right now is use the tops here and just see what that looks like. And I'd say that looks pretty good. So my thought is that you could sort of build a channel out from there and see what happens. And it's kind of like right on it. So maybe the channel doesn't hold. There's a much wider channel. There's a much wider move here that I might use. Yeah, there's a creek that broke already that's from higher, but that's just a fan. So this is the one I was looking at that I said I think it really did break. So if I were using just a channel methodology here, I'd say this broke. What I would also say is that this is pretty normal. I tried to mention this and I tried to explain this back here as well. When we went up at this angle, we went parabolic, right, in the last move of this particular motion. And I was trying to explain the same thing back here. I was saying that like anytime you go parabolic inside of like a channel, there's a strong chance you're going to break out and leave the channel because it doesn't usually do that. It's pretty unusual. So like this is the motion on the first M. And notice it didn't hold. It just kind of broke through and left. It actually didn't leave. It didn't come back in the channel until it really broke back out. And even then it's like this may have not come up to this point until way over here to reclaim it. So I'm not sure why there's like a disconnect between what I'm saying, what people are saying in this chat right now, but there seems to be a really strong disconnect. Like the most typical accumulation schematic we have, it is like January 2021. It's also like March of 2022. You get a bottom and then you basically have a rising accumulation that's like a rapid fire move. And then what happens is that always, this is why I drew what I drew over here. I don't know, again, like, is this like a completely different group of people than the 80 some odd people that have been here for the last like 2 weeks? I feel like I've had a solid like 80 to 100 people every day. This is like a completely different group of people today or something. I don't know. I'll just explain it again. This is very normal. Like when you get to the top, this almost always has to happen. And that's why when I did this, I said, oh, I think it's going to come back up and it's going to distribute. Why am I not looking at the price right now? I'll tell you why, because this is the same thing. It's just bigger. This was a cross of this lower creek. This is a bigger cross of the higher creek. It's the same exact setup. So my thought was this was going to advance, go back down, pop up, hit the bottom, and then run again. Because that's what it does, like when it's healthy. That pullback could be a fib level. The main thing that happens is it goes back and it usually checks a really important creek cross, and it doesn't come ultimately back below the original creek. If it comes back below the original creek, it's dead. We have seen that happen at times, and it's dead. As soon as that happens, it's gone. That has not happened yet. That's not even close to happening yet. Like the original creek's way down here at 464. So before you get your undergarments in a bunch, just pay attention. Golly. I'm being kind of like mean, but I'm trying to like understand where people are coming from. I just don't get it. So you have the same thing. You've got up thrust one, you've got another one here, another one here. It's exactly the same, guys. It's the same exact, almost exactly the same. It's the same movement that we just had back here. I don't know how else to say it. Here. People like bars patterns better than they like my doodles, so there you go. Blah, 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 blah. Blah, blah, blah. Brains exploding everywhere. What, how? Because it's an acceleration that is not sustainable. Where did that come from? It came from right here. Sorry, guys. I'm being ridiculous. Some of y'all are like, clown. Knew it couldn't take this guy seriously. Good. Don't take me seriously. That's better for me. Yeah, it came from right here. Did you see do you see that? Whoop. Whoop. We need one of those whistle things. Whoop. 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 All right. We get it? Good. So what do we need to do then? Let's not panic. Let's just look at the setup as it is. Okay? The setup as it is a little different because in this case, we already know that when this came back down, I didn't think it went low enough. I was at that point looking at very low possibilities. When we were back in this range, I straight up was looking at this guy. And I thought we might come back down to 460. So why? Because again, the sell down could have been anything, in my opinion. I was kind of like, I don't know where it could go. But it could have gone down really low. And I was like, well, I don't know exactly where it goes, but I mean, in my opinion, it could have come down to 460. When I was looking at that, what I was specifically doing was checking where these jumps happened. And frankly, as long as it didn't come too low, it was okay. So right now, if I were doing the same exact thing right this second, what would I say? I would say it could come down pretty low, but that's because it's set up low. There it is. So there's a support right here at 504. Okay? That support at 504 is important. It could provide the support. Sometimes you do see that because I remember back in March, it did something similar. It came to the previous floor. It was a little weird, but what they did in March was they did a shallow S-curve low here. It came below this mark, almost like a spring. So it would be like us coming down to like 499 or something. And then it reacted. This is almost exactly what happened in March. And I remember the day of the week. Like I remember it was like into a Thursday that this pushed up, and then the Friday held up here. So I'm not going to say, like, again, that a fractal is going to be the end-all be-all. It's not. Okay, it's just not. But it's a pattern of trading. And that pullback that we see was what I was expecting back here. And it's the same setup. Parabolic move, breaks sideways. That's the same thing that happened here. Parabolic move, breaks sideways. It's going to probably try to retrace or build a floor. Same exact problem. It needed to cool off indicators. This is going to be more severe because it's the end of a bigger wave. This was a very small wave because this wave was the first upward wave of a bigger, larger wave. It's like saying waves within waves, right? If I were looking at this objectively, I would say, yeah, this is pretty large, all things considered, and then you would look back and say, well, this one by comparison was actually quite small. There's double M shape right there. Okay. See that? So this was built within this. So at this point, I'm kind of like, all right, so there's a difference there. The momentum's different. Volume is a little different. Ultimately, the sell-off is probably going to be stronger at the top. Where do I not want it to go? This is probably the main creek that I'm going to look at right now. It's this guy. it's possible it could come down to like 490 or even come down to 484 again or 485 again, because there's a build out here that sort of suggests that you might have that issue, you know. When we left, we tested a couple creeks, 2 spots predominantly where I would be focusing my attention. So number one is on this build out from Thursday into Friday. So Thursday the 27th into Friday. There's 2 touch points on the top, and then when we left on Monday, it came back and it built like a wick above it or below it and built a support right on it, and then it left from that point. That's a very important creek. That would lead you back down to like 480s. So at this point, if you came through and went to that creek, you're at 480s. There's a higher one on the next S curve, which is in the middle. This is what I would describe the middle, squishy middle of the bigger S curves. It's a little confusing, but it's kind of like when you're making a cross up, you're going to jump a few different creeks here and there. This is the one that sort of builds out to the top. So this is one that I would talk about as a setup for the top region. And I know that's a little odd, but it's basically like that's where the creek is right now, and it's low. So again, this one's very steep. This is the one that I thought we were going to come back down on Monday, and I was like sitting here going, oh, I don't know what's going to happen, boo. Because I was being like that. I was just very like melancholy and like, oh, I don't like the RSI. This is bad. Because it was divergent, still divergent. It stayed divergent all the way through this top. And I said that I just felt like it was overcooked on every time frame but like an hour. So unless the operator just wants to like crank it up this week, that doesn't really bode well. So what's your point, Booksy? I guess my point is that if I'm going to make a big move up to 6 at this point, it's probable that you're going to have to build out another bottom that's strong. So this region that we're kind of entering right now, all the way down to, it's below the trend, which is fine, you know. That region down here is probably where I'd try to build it out. And you could come pretty low, depending on how much time it takes to get there. If it hits lows today, Wednesday, it's probably not going to likely go beneath 492. But if it hit lows Monday or Friday, rather, I mean, you could come down to 480s again. It's way down here at 486. That also is where we intersect this outermost trend right here. So it's quite literally on the nose on 487. You know, and this to me would not be, it really wouldn't be bearish. If this were like a falling kind of S-curve type deal down to 488, totally seems possible to me that could happen. What about all the other stuff with the hooks? We're not there yet. You know, that's what I would say about that. We're just not there yet. You know, there's going to be things that we have to look at after that point in time. Like one of the things is like when you come back up, this was what I mentioned on the previous example, is that double push up kind of thing after the end. You have to make a certain kind of jump. Usually what happens is that you build out a floor along a previous creek up here, and that's the first step, and that would be this guy. That's now in the books because you have it there. So you would build out a creek. So again, I'm assuming a lot here, saying that I think it happened Monday, but if it happened Monday, this is how it'd probably need to happen. You'd need to build out along a creek and then advance from that point forward. Right, so once again, kind of regain support here. Ideally, this could even be higher, or this happens earlier. I would actually prefer it happen on Friday, because then you could have it, and I said the same thing last week and it didn't happen. Remember? It was like that Friday, and I said, I really want it to happen Friday, and then it didn't happen Friday. It took all day to get to that point, and then it ended up being Monday. I would much rather it happen on a Friday because it puts you in a really strong position to do something like this. This would be ultra strong. If we ended the day on Friday up here at 430 after making a slightly new high, honestly, it's pretty much exactly like what I'm talking about here. GME makes the dive, gets the support it needs, comes back up, lands on top of the important area. It's actually kind of identical because they're both over the creek. Excuse me. They both complete their pullback. They both push up on Friday and then end high. That would be very, very bullish. Thanks for posting that stock news update, but please don't spam. Might tank right through, but I hope you're right. We're not going back down to 430. That would be bearish. If we went to 430, I would not be buying back in. I'd be like, I'm out. That would be really weak at this point because it's already advanced creeks that, I mean, unless it got there like way later, like a week and a half, then I would be like, okay, maybe it's a giant double bottom, but no. Otherwise, I don't think so. That's not what I want. So I'm really looking at this, and I'm considering like how this builds out. Yeah, I think from my vantage point, like this makes a lot of sense to me. I wonder what this is. I wonder if this matters. Not that it has to be a parallel, but it might matter. Maybe. I don't feel like that has the same gravitas. Let's see. So this ends up doing a little mini cross here. I don't really see anything like that in this range. Probably that. Actually, there's a double top over here. Yeah, that's it. All right. So my price target for this rebound, if it hits today, it's probably down at 493. Tomorrow it might be more like 491, 492. So I'll just say 490, 492. Let's do 491 just in case it goes a little low. 493. Oh, don't do that to me. You know I was clicking on that. My guess is that's where we end up today, right here. Or tomorrow. Market is closed tomorrow. I know. I meant Friday. Sorry. Today's a half day. Today's a short day. Sorry. Yeah. If I said tomorrow, I meant Friday. Yeah, I think this is likely. So we'll see what happens, but I think this is highly probable. I'm going to look at this as a couple different moves, and then I'm going to make an effort to try one more thing locally. I'm going to try to build it out locally. I know there's a lot of noise on this chart, but I'm trying to reduce some of that noise. We'll see if I can do it. I think this is the breakdown they want, though. I think they're going to go for try to hit near 494 again. There's a lot of reasons for that, but I'm looking at the setup, and I'm kind of seeing where this layup went to and why it went there. And then I'm also looking at the bigger picture setup. The only other possibility for me is like coming all the way back down to like the 485 level again, like this lower creek, which again, I thought it tested, but if it's not a good enough test, we could come low. So there's only two major targets in my brain. And I'll leave this one off till we get there. One is this early one at 490s. The other one would be down here at like 480s. I'm feeling pretty good about that. What about the golden ratio? I mean, like, that's the other thing is like, well, if you just did a fib retrace, if you're just a fib guy, you would say that you'd probably say you think this could come all the way back down to like 470 before moving, you know? I mean, is this a fib at 494? Yeah, it's the 382. So it does add up that this could be the level. It also adds up that 484 could be the level. That's the 0.5. So all of these are pretty much exactly right. We don't really need to worry too much about being perfect. They're all fib levels. All the ones we've got marked off. Fib level, fib level, fib level, fib level, right? So these are all your fibs. I would say this one is a possibility, you know. 618 retrace. AMC likes to do deep retracements. I don't want to do that. I'm just saying it seems like a possibility. And 484 is just a super important level. I had talked about on the 4 hour wanting to see an actual pullback to that moving average, which is probably a little above 484 now, but it would be about the same spot. So I'm going to try to actually use this tool that I never use. That's so much better. Yeah, so we had talked about this coming back down, you know, building out for a retracement back to kind of the middle before a bigger move. But I mostly was thinking about this guy. There's a 180 EMA that I like, and it's pretty low. It's way back here. We really didn't test it very much. We kind of just took off. So I think coming up to this level, we might even see this rise up a little bit. We may be right about this 494 pocket. I would be a little surprised if it stops sooner than that, but that to me looks right. I'm not even going to look at the daily. The daily is way above us. It's up there like 9. And there's nothing else really to look at. Lower time frames are really low, so it's 4 hour or bust in terms of EMAs. There's nothing else there until real low. I mean, it's starting to look to me like that low volume sell off, lower volume. We may get a big dip at the end. I don't know. Looks okay. Maybe we don't even go down as low as I think. Maybe it is like the higher end. We get there at like 494, it just kind of quickly drops through and then recovers. We'll see. If 5 breaks, definitely going to hit that 494. You guys are like, well, that's 6 cents, 10 cents. Anybody can guess that. Yeah, but did they do what I did? No, they didn't. I think this is like your clothing hanger deal. The curtain rod drop. You drop down here. So this is sort of like the entry point to the bottom, if you want to call it that. So if you're looking at this locally, this is where I would put my mark, 508. And then I would actually start working on, strange as it might sound, because you may not want to do this on a micro level, but I would actually probably start working on this guy, because this is going to be your greater indicator on a bottom. Kind of glad we got some like real motion today though. Wow. How did I do that? I don't know how I did that. That was just a guess. This build out wasn't like a guess, but the fact that it hit that perfectly, I didn't do that on purpose. I don't know. I don't want to take credit for that. Yeah, maybe we'll see how this builds out. Maybe this goes higher. What do I think about cost going up 100%? You probably weren't here earlier in the stream. I talked about it. I said that 922 seemed like a likely target, and I did a little build out for it. And 922 is the first target. It already hit that. And then 1288 if it continued. But frankly, I don't know if it will, you know. It's hard to say. I think 922 is probably enough in terms of like the move up, because The breakout is a potential wedge, and so you have a possibility that you can get a 618, which is up here around 1288, which is a floor. But there is a previous supply right at 9, so that's all I think about it. I also think that it reminds me of what I'm expecting to see on AMC, maybe GME, but it reminds me a lot of what we may experience on AMC. So that concept of like a push up and then a second push up to really push resistance and then also check some higher creeks. Those are things that I think would be really good. Yeah, AMC dropped because it is way overdone. It's been overbought for like 4 days. It needs to cool off. I really genuinely think we can keep it that simple. GME filled its gap. Yeah. Hab, I don't think that if we don't see 15, well, like, what does that mean? I mean, because like if we went up to 14 and we made a higher high, I'd probably just be like, whatever, that's it. It's still a move. It's still a big move, you know. If we just straight up distribute or whatever and go back down to like 350 or something, then yeah, I think the build out, it still needs to jump the creeks. It either does or it doesn't. And if you do, then it's probably going to happen closer to November. There was a possibility of a mid-August run based on the way that IWM was setting up. Like if IWM went down into like a spring action, it might actually spring in August as opposed to later in November. So I mean, is a roll of the dice probably, because we don't know what that build out would look like exactly. But yeah, I would expect there to still be another move because the macros chart's not done. The only way you can conclude that like it's over, it's not going to go up again this year is if you just basically believe it's dead, like it's going to go bankrupt. Because like I don't see any other way to read the chart. I even get a little irritated now just hearing these pundits and these journalists talk about how horrible they're like, you need to stay away from this with a 15-foot pole, you know, like it's just constant berating of the stock. But the thing is like they don't know what's going on. They're not invested in it. They're not looking at the technicals. They don't care. They're not looking at the options chain. They're not looking at TA. They're not looking at, most of them aren't looking at, you know, the big buyers. They're just looking at the price movement day to day. So on a 3% day, they explain it away with the news. On a 10% day that's up, they explain it away with the news. And the only explanation that they had from their silly little like vultures' nests was that that's what they are. The only explanation, they're just trying to get a bunch of clicks. The only explanation they had sitting up in their little nest was the roaring kitty thing. But we already know that that's not. You all, the people that have been following me for the last several months, you already know that that's not what I thought. I did not think roaring kitty was going to step out of hiding and cause anything to run. That wasn't even on my radar. I figured he was just done. I'm not looking for that. I wasn't even really looking at the options chain at that time. All I was doing was reading the chart, and I was saying I thought we were going to go to maybe make a move to like 14, possibly higher. Those are things that were there in the technicals. So I guess what I'm trying to say is like, unless you're in that group with the journalists and you just think that it's dead and it's going to keep dying because it has to, because debt's bad and all that stuff. Yeah, it's bad. And I think what that means is that you have heavy shorts. That's a big part of it. So you will have deep retracements. You will have heavy pullbacks. But unless you're in that group, I don't really see how you could look at the chart and think that it's over. To me, it's like just getting started. Like it just started. Like it pushed out of a huge resistance we had, and it's backed up, and now it's chilling out. And I think it's going to make a secondary advancement, so to push a little higher. That's my opinion. But if it didn't, I wouldn't be despairing. I would just be like, okay, well, it still has to eventually get over that creek, so it's going to come back up. And I don't believe that it's bearish. Like, I think it's going to go back to 60 to 70, and then maybe a secondary move to like up to 100. And then that's that. I don't know if it's going to go any farther, but that's my TA at the end of the day. So there can be massive ups and downs for all I care. I just want to trade it right, you know. That's my thing. All right, yeah, GME went down, filled its gap. So first things first, there needs to be kind of a gentle understanding of two things. So one is you've got the gap is filled, sure, that's fine. Maybe three things then. But you've got a potential to find support here back on the creek and back above the floor. The floor being pretty low. It's actually at like 2364. We might find support a little bit higher at 2382. That's a possibility. So that's something that I would look for right here, is just some kind of a support region in this like pocket. If you break back through the creek, there's no way to read that except bearish. So I need you to be, we got to be crystal clear about that. Like this advancement with a heavy sell-off that breaks you back down would be short-term bearish, okay? Because basically it's like a secondary attempt to push the creek that's failed. Because you've already tried once, this would be a second attempt that failed. So I don't really want that to happen. It might not happen, right? It might happen. So you just have to pay attention. Where's the creek? It's this big fat white line coming down. Go back to the original high and drag it through roughly this high that we made on the 27th of June. And you'll get it. And you'll see the motion I'm looking at. I think that's where it is. So I just wanted to kind of build out here, kind of between these short-term and long-term creeks, and just build a support in this little pocket here. And then the only other thing I would say is like you need to eventually kind of break out. So there seems to be a very large intersection Friday near open. So it's like 10 a.m. on Friday or 11 a.m. on Friday. So today's a short day. So I may not expect a lot to happen today. That's it. That's all I can say about that. If we go down low here and break down below the creek or below 2362, we have a couple supports, but then I think this is back on the table, frankly. I think you're looking at this low creek support, this orange line, because I think that's part of the play here is maybe we're trying to get back to this support that we built out on earlier. And this is a kind of a walk down to try to sort of get you to a sort of a, almost like plans within plans, right? Like this was a floor and then there's kind of a localized bottom, but then this could be a giant floor where you're trying to get like a huge spring dip at the end. And that's where I think you'd go. But I don't really want to get stuck under here long either way, because this is definitely a potential breakdown zone for GME. Like without a doubt, being underneath this trend is kind of dangerous. It's spring-like is what it is. Meaning you're like losing the overall kind of structure, I suppose, is the best way to put it. It'd be like looking at this as like a paw with caddy or one caddy or two, and there's a hook at the end. And I do think you can see that possibility here if it fails. And again, the hook doesn't mean that you're necessarily going into oblivion, but it would indicate to me a weakness for sure. So there it is here. I think that would be a strong indication that there's a potential big weakness in the chart. And we would have to then look at where it goes next. Frankly, I think it's probably this guy. I don't know where else it would go. So it would be a really low hit. So people that ever want to get 17 or whatever would probably get their wish if it started tracking down hard. But I'm of the opinion that 2141 could still be very similar to the previous setup and give you like a double reversal move. So we had this LSPY kind of thing happen over here too. If you look back, right before it broke down lower, we had this chop motion right on the previous bottom. It's pretty similar in some ways. It's not exactly the same. You can anticipate like how that might play into the overall motion of everything, right? I can't tell you where you should take profits because I don't know your personal situation, nor should I be advising you on financial matters. If it's me, and I think it goes up to above the previous top, I'm probably out. I mean, I'm not sure what I'll do, but usually what I do is I take it kind of day by day, minute by minute even, if it's that crazy. Because at that point, you want the profit to rise as high as it can. But every time you wait, you're taking you have to take the calculated risk that the next time you wait, it could be the drop, you know. Like everybody always wants to wait and pull the trigger at the very top. But very few people will get the very top. Very few people will get it. Unless you just have a really great target and you just happen to be right, you know, and you did the work and you got this target and it ends up being the one that hits. But it is a lot like rolling the dice. After it gets to the top, what I usually do is I exit a decent size of my position. Like I make sure I have all the profit that I want to have. And then I might leave, I'll just throw an example out there. Let's say I had 100 contracts. I honestly might sell like 75 of them. You know what I mean? And then just kind of start slowly get out of the next 25 into the top. Now, some people are going to look at that and say, dude, that's so sheepish. You're going to lose so much profit. If you had just held them all, you would be raking in the dough. Yeah, but I don't know what's going to happen. So it's easy when you look backwards at like a move and you sort of do the math in reverse. People always do that. I do it to myself too. You'll go back and you'll be like, man, if I just held those to the top, I could have made twice as much money. Yeah, but you didn't know exactly where the top was going to be. Like you had an idea, you might have had a strong inclination of where the top was going to be, but you didn't know for a fact that it was going to stop at such and such price. So everything's easier in retrospect to kind of be sitting there like grumbling about it, saying, well, I could have made more money. You know. Yeah, to me, GME is at the highest risk of the two because remember what I just talked about on AMC? I was kind of making a point about what if it had happened that we had been flat instead of rising, you know? Like what would have happened on AMC and like why that would have been more bearish? I was just talking about that like 20 minutes ago. I hate to say it, but that's kind of what's going on with GME. So GME really needs to make some moves. Like I've been fairly optimistic about GME because I think it can make the big moves and it does tend to stay flat longer. AMC likes to do the rises and have deep retracements. GME tends to build out a little longer. But what I drew right here earlier in the stream when I was talking about this breakdown, and I was saying like, you know, like if this had done this, I would have been way more bearish, you know, because this is usually how we distribute. And then you end up having to go way down to do like a creek check. And I was drawing this out. I hate to say it, but GME is kind of in that predicament right now. Like it's kind of doing exactly what I said you don't want it to do. which is it keeps building out lower and lower and lower. And it did break, I think, one of those trends. So I'm not sure why that is. It could just be maybe there's just a desire to kind of, maybe there is a need to go lower, and AMC made its deeper dive and GME didn't ever fill this gap down here at like 19. Maybe there's a desire to like not let it be, And I think the way this is built out makes you wonder, because if this S curve's down, it's going to be ugly. I just got to be straight about it. I'm not completely flip-flopping. Don't hear me wrong. There's always a chance. Like, this could have been the same thing. Or this could have been like a big old S curve down. And we would have been like, okay, that stinks, So don't hear me wrong. But it's still a possibility that what we're talking about here, this 2141, or even just coming right back up into Friday, like those are still very real possibilities here. I feel like they're high probabilities even because of the way this is setting up. But there is a sense in which, yeah, you may have broken a level here, and if we're just being kind of realistic and we're looking at it like this, we're like, yeah, it's not really what you want to do. You don't really want to do this. And that's kind of what GME is doing. So GME really would do way better, in my opinion, to just recover. Like, I don't want it to go back below this creek again. I want it to hold and then go up. As I would see this as a very strong weakness if it broke up and then dropped again. If it had happened underneath the creek, I might have been a little more like chill about it. I mentioned that, I think, on Monday. Like, I was like, well, if we came back up, then we can come back down and go ahead and get the low. But at this point, it's already made a new low. Now it's come back above the creek. If it can't hold it, I think it's 21, or it's like way down to like that 1920 area. And then probably from that point, you might as well just argue for the full 17, because that to me would look like a typical like Cattier distribution cycle. You got the 1-2 over here, and then you got the 3-4. And if it's a hook, it's a hook. If it didn't recover, it didn't recover. Yeah, but Booksy, it's GME. Well, isn't that the nature of it, though, right? Isn't that the very nature of these stocks? They're on the razor's edge, and if they happen to go above here, you have this massive potential for upside. I mean, I'm not even being very sheepish about it at all. I'm saying, like, I think we could probably run up really high, We're talking about like a 60% move in like a day or something. Why? Because it's essentially like an actual short squeeze, like at that point, because you've basically loaded up accumulated shorts here. They're thinking it's going to drop, and then it goes the other way, and it's just explosion, But does that happen every time? No. Cost is at that level again. It's at 977. Looks like it's trying to advance. So we may see 1288 after all. It could be a huge day for costs. So congratulations if you're in that play. Wish the best for you. I don't really have any advice for you. I can't give you advice anyways. I can tell you where the levels are. You can go back and look. Pretty much everything from here to here has been a thread of distribution. So I would expect there to be some possible selling from about 1078 up to 1288 today. I think that's a strong chance. If it can hold above the marker we made at 922, I think it's going to move up again, advance again. So, yeah. I don't know. We'll see what happens. All right. I'm looking at IWM again. It's still doing that thing where it's like punch, punch, punch. Real low swings. Again, it kind of, to me, it looks like more like GME right here. It's like a lot more, there's a lot more weakness in this than I would like. So I think once again, we're sitting on that creek. I kind of just doodled it at first. I'm starting to think it's probably pretty close to where I drew it now. Like, I don't think I was that off. I think I was pretty close. Obviously there's a higher place, but this is how it's been working out for us. Like, every time we come above this marker, this like curve coming down, every time we've done that in the last few months, it's been distribution. So the struggle has been to get over that. And I mentioned the idea of coming over 202 frequently, because that's where I think the creek is. It's like right around 202. So it's kind of on a razor's edge, just like GME. You know, if you continually lose that creek, eventually you're just going to sell down. Like, it's not going to hold forever. You know, I think there's a controlled nature to this that makes me wonder if we're trying to mislead everybody in the play, like bears and bulls. There seems to be a bit of a back and forth every other day here, where you're getting these advancements, but then they're selling through really hard. If I were just glancing at this, I would say it kind of looks bearish, but at the same time, I'm like, yeah, it does. So I have to kind of wonder, you know, is it gonna sell down hard to 198 or something and go back to the floor before advancing? I'm not convinced that it's a full-on distribution just yet, though I could easily look at this and read it like a bear flag. That could greatly affect, and this as well, even though this is technically a divergence that hasn't really completed yet, arguably. But I suppose at the end of the day, like price-wise, it's kind of flat to flat, so it's a weak divergence. Maybe not enough to kind of get you up over the hook or over the push. So if I were looking at this on the whole, I don't think we can bear like more days of this kind of stuff. Like, we can't continually push up and close beneath this creek. Like, we need a real solid close above the creek. We've only gotten like maybe one. So I'm not really thrilled by the way this is looking. I've been very optimistic about it because I still see a strong potential. Has it made the hits that I thought it might make here and there? Yeah. Yesterday it did not. Now that doesn't mean inherently, that it's bad or something. That's not what it means. It could just be because, hey, it's you know, Independence Day for America, 4th of July, fireworks. Maybe we're just not going. Maybe we're just holding it because of that. And as a result, we might end the week right at 202 again and be like just sitting here, you know, and then we'll find out. Maybe that's a big part of it. Maybe there's a desire to not advance too quickly as a result. But the general vibe is more distributive ever since. I mean, this looks healthy. This looks distributive. So this initial advancement looks like a buy-in to me. These first two pushes look like a buy-in. The second two look distributive. It's kind of that simple in some ways. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. I feel like it's sort of changed. And I don't know if it's just because of the holiday week or what. But I feel like it's altered a good bit. There's a big difference. The first two, everything is off the bottom really sharp. You can see like it spends a lot more time in the upper 50%. It spends less time in the bottom. But on the second half, it's completely the opposite. It's like, and I know that this is also where we have the change of the quarter. So that's another thing to consider. It's like, well, technically, like they could be just swapping positions like crazy because the quarter changed right here, you know, on the 1st of July. So there's a transition very clearly into sort of more of a sell mode, but we're still holding flat. I'm trying to understand, like, if I'm an operator and I'm buying, and I think there's going to be a markup, it might be to my advantage to make it look really bearish. But sometimes that's like reading too much into it. You're kind of reading a bluff where there isn't one. So I would rather just rely on the closing values, I suppose. I think if we can get up above the 202 area this week and hold above it with some strength, we might be in good shape. I have to just sort of leave it at that right now because I do see this as a transition from more strength to more weakness in terms of like supply and demand. So I don't know, it's complicated. There's a lot going on right here in the last like 3 or 4 days. The jobs report is also coming out on the employment report is also coming out on Friday. I think if it comes in hot, the market's going to read that as bad. So I think PCE was good. It was like slightly good, and then jobs report is coming out on Friday. So employment rather, and that could drastically impact the price for the next day or so. So just keep that in mind. I think this kind of setup, it's just a very mixed bag because it keeps pushing above and distributing back down. It's clear as mud, but it's there. That is it's not just an advancement over 202. It just so happens that 202 is now the level at which we're fighting it, but you might as well just say 202. If you're not sure where the creek is, it's basically right there. So I find that to be a bit annoying. And I do think maybe that's part of the reason why we're not getting any kind of early advancement. Like we looked at the setup yesterday and I was like, I drew it like 12 different ways. I mean, there's not really more than a couple ways to do this kind of stuff. This is kind of the only way you can do it where it's like flat. But everything else from that bottom, just mathematically it was just not being met. Like in terms of like the rhythm of the waves and all that stuff, like how fast it was moving before versus where it is now. It's clearly like a setup that is being like trampled on, you know, like there's not really any desire to take it back up to this point. Maybe Friday, but it's like, I mean, it looked really good yesterday. I'm not of the opinion that every time I do something it's perfect. I'm really not. But there's also this element of like, you might have been right, but then you were also wrong. So like you may have been right that there was a possible path there, but then it just didn't get taken. And if that's the case, you have to ask the question, why? Is it purely because of the Independence holiday? Is it because this is actually doing something different? You should answer those questions, you know. Everything's kind of being taken to lows, in my opinion. It's taken to back down today. It would be easy enough for someone to come in and do TA and say, it's just flat. It's just flat. You know what I mean? Like I could have been saying that for like 2 weeks. Oh, it's just flat. It's just flat, you know. But doesn't really help me make any informed decisions. So if you're of the opinion that like it's just flat because of the holiday, or it's just flat because the quarter change, or it's just flat because they're waiting for data, I mean, you're not wrong. It's just that that's not really doing any work, in my opinion. It's just kind of talking about what's already there. It's like saying, you know, oh, I breathe air. Like, yeah, I mean, you're right. It's there. You can tell. It's kind of apparent, but this looks really fast. I wonder if it's trying to do it all. It's a lot of volume too. This is not like light volume. they've been talking about volume being low, but I really don't think this is that low. It looks pretty comparable. It's above average, at least lately. I don't think this is quite right. This looks really quick. Because I'm tempted to just say, like, well, maybe it's just doing it all, like, super fast. You know? It's kind of the levels that you had. Maybe it's just going, like, really fast. I mean, maybe. That doesn't really make a lot of sense, though, because you got time. You got Friday. Yeah. So I'm not really sure that it's worth stressing over either, but I will say that on the whole, it seems like the price action on the IWM is kind of flipped to slightly more bearish, and I'll just leave it at that. It could be, again, because of sort of speculative. It could be because of an anticipation of a good jobs report. And maybe we're just bringing it low. Maybe we're trying to trap in a lot more shorts. Maybe. It could be an indication of the selling occurring because of people trading out positions in the first days of the quarter. And so a lot of selling is going on. It makes the chart look really distributive. We haven't broken down. Like, we haven't broken down levels. We just haven't broken out. So there's a lot of reasonable explanations, I would say, for maybe why it looks the way it looks. I wish I had the answers. I wish I could tell you. Maybe Friday we might have a little more because of the jobs report, but it's honestly, I mean, I'm just thinking out loud. It's probably not going to be till Monday or Tuesday next week. I'm specifically thinking about IWM because I'm thinking about this setup, and I'm like, really, unless something drastic happens Friday, so he's trying to say tomorrow or today, then it just doesn't, there's not really anywhere to go. You're kind of just trapped here. You could sit here and do nothing. So we may compress until Monday and just make necessary arrangements for whatever's going to happen. Let's check higher time frames on IWM. I'm sorry getting sick of looking at this one. I mean, same deal. It's kind of like this could be a bottom, but we're sort of missing any kind of like a final bounce in the moves on the indicator. Usually you get a little bit of a final like dip. Right now it just looks like a big bowl shape, which I don't really have a guidance for, because to me that's usually not good. I don't really like that. I'd rather have the rounded shape on the top than the upward shape. The upward shape feels more like distribution to me. I'm kind of making excuses for it, aren't I? Like, I'm trying to make excuses for it looking bearish. Maybe it just looks bearish. Yeah, I don't know. It just seems like it's missing like a final drop. I would have expected, if this was it, I would have expected it to kind of just take off, and it didn't happen, so. We may need that And it doesn't have to be like all the way to the bottom. It could just be like where the RSI resets to like 41. It may be that we end up coming back down to like 198, and that's enough, you know. I don't know. I had watched this build out thinking it looked super strong, but the longer it goes on, the more uncertain I am because of how it's set up. It's just a very strange price action. In the grand scheme of things, would dropping to 191 be like the end all be all? No, actually it would be fine, because I think you could be doing like a spring action down here. And in the end, like, that doesn't determine that it's going to definitely have a downward direction, you know. That's not how it works. I think if it's healthy, you could just quickly recover and have a rally. I mentioned this yesterday. I think this kind of maybe annoy people, but I want you to know what I'm doing, because I realize I didn't ever really verbalize it. And I think people will get kind of annoyed because I'm very, very bullish about something, and then I'll sit there and like pick it apart for like days. That's just the way I like to do it, because it helps keep me from being too much like of a permabull, for one, and not see the possibility of downside. But it prepares me to trade alone. Like, if you're trading by yourself, I'm not saying you should have a bunch of warrior or anxiety. I'm not saying you shouldn't have conviction about things. Those are important for traders, is to like reduce the stress, have conviction. But to have a healthy dose of skepticism, you're going to have to probably play your own devil's advocate. Like, most of the time when you're by yourself trading, that's where trading usually happens. And so you end up having to make those decisions about whether or not I'm going to stay or not. And I think a lot of the times we make those decisions by ourselves based on the initial information that we had, and that can be really powerful. But if something changes, like, you should be willing to play devil's advocate. And so I think I do think initially this looks fine. The more I stare at it now, the more I'm like, meh. It looks very distributive right here. Like, it's having trouble getting over 202. There's clearly like a high volume selling going off. All it would take, in my opinion, is like another close or so beneath 202, and you probably get sellers dumping it, because people dumping it, because it would be like bearish signals. I'm not looking at everything under the sun, but my guess is that there's probably EMAs right below us. So like, it's both, you know. Like, on the one hand, we crossed over and we're building what looks like we could be building a support, you know, but it also looks like we could just be flat out distributing over top the 4 hour. And I think that's the nature of it. So I wouldn't be overly bullish unless we made support at this point over the 202. And I think I would be pretty bearish if it came back down and didn't find, definitely under 200. If it didn't find support there, I'd be like, meh, I don't think so. Because the way this would probably break down would make you think that it's going to be a rebound. If it broke down, it would probably like come back down through the creek and then hook back up to like 201.75 or something, and make you think it's going to come back up. And then you'd have like a drop. And then it just kind of keep doing the same thing. You get like big hooks and then just big sell-offs, you know. And this to me is like possible. I don't know exactly where it would go. I keep thinking 198 seems right, but it could be lower. That's good, man. I'm happy for you if you're in it. It's way high. So it might actually just kind of go for the full gamut. I don't know where it's going to go, to be honest. So the 1288 was and that's cool. It went from like 380 to like 16. That's a really big move. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. There's probably other things here that I could have looked at. I didn't really look at every possible. I only drew like 5 lines, which is pretty light for me. I think it busted that one. That would have been the one I would have said was more likely to get stopped at. Again, being that it's near that top. So we'll see. Yeah, I mean, it definitely could, because I think it could potentially just go back up. But you have to kind of take into consideration, like every time it halts, there could be some pretty considerable selling happening. And then this is a level of, we've talked about these kind of drop-off cliffs. This $18 is another one. So each of these is going to be a key test. The actual, what I called like the 50 line, is actually way up here on the wave. So that could come pretty far up to like 31. So again, you know, like I wasn't saying don't invest or do invest or whatever. I just said I'm not going to, because I don't have the capital to like put into this position and like watch it fly to the moon, you know. But if you're in it, you're in it. So, you know, continue to ride it up as long as you can. Be careful. Enjoy it. You know, you got to celebrate the victories where you get them. So if you have this play, like, you should be really happy about it. And I would just keep watching it. I mean, there's just a lot going on here. There's a possible spot right there. I'm just looking at the previous top here. So maybe that looks like a pretty decent rise. Yeah, I think there's a lot of possibility for stop here or then way up here, but I mean, it looks good. I don't know. I don't know what else to say about it. Nothing on the indicators tells me it's going to last forever. Its weekly's already completely overbought, but it already was, so. I mean, it's like anything. When it makes 250 something percent in a day, more than likely it's going to give it all back over time. So most stocks, obviously, if they're doing something like this, you get a big move. Maybe it's a fib retracement, you know, who knows. Again, like it could go pretty high, but there's a fib at a 0.5 at 1698. That's kind of right where this cliff is. So that's a high likelihood, I think, as well. There's a lot right here, actually. So maybe. But then, yeah, I think up to 30. That's kind of where I had drawn the hook. So usually, like, the first drop will be really nasty. And then you'll just start wishing that you had sold or whatever, because it'll start doing this kind of garbage, like, I mean, this is just usually what happens, you know. You'll start faking back up and you won't get the resistance, you know, until finally it's like, okay, we're done. So, again, like I can't give you financial advice, but I would just say, like, watch carefully the levels, you know. This is probably where we're going to see some sideways coming back down, but I don't think it would last forever. If you did get one more, it probably wouldn't be as high. It'd be something like that. We talked about that for AMC too. I don't know if it takes that long. It could be way faster, but there's sometimes there's like a massive secondary move. It's usually just that hooking action, and in this case it would have built out probably along, and you guys are like, well, it lasts till September. I mean, I think it'd be like a day or two. It can be really fast. So yeah, you're still going to make money. It's just the volatility is going to get squashed if you hold through it all. So again, enjoy it. This is kind of where I would say most likely things kind of fall apart, but who knows? I mean, this is near November. Maybe there's another rally, you know? I don't know. Could be. I mean, I guess I should just be happy it's holding above 202. I just want to see a nice green candle though, like a normal candle. The one thing that's kind of an advantageous here, I was talking about IWM being kind of distributive looking, but mostly because this high volume top and repeated up thrust. If there's one thing that might be kind of positive, maybe, if it can hold today, is that this is a very low volume pullback. Like all the volume coming down here is pretty low. It's like, and I know you guys are like, well, yeah, it's a holiday week. I know. But historically very, very low, which means that there's not a lot of conviction in the price action. And again, it might just be in large part because of the holiday. Like not as many traders. It's a half day. It's going to be short anyways. We need a good day on Friday for IWM. We need to close above 200 today, and then we need a really good day Friday. That's what my prescription is. That's almost a hammer on the weekly. So the weekly looks a little bit better. Y'all are like, what? Not hammer? But yeah, imagine though, if, for example, if let's say it held today at 202, that ends up being the bottom of the candle. And then on Friday, you have a big push. It could be, it doesn't have to be huge, but even if it pushed up to like 203, you'd have a pretty solid, much more bullish looking candle for the weekly. If it went up to above 204, you're going to have a hammer, like a massive hammer here. You know, and obviously volume is important. RSI and all that jazz is important. We'd have to wait. That hasn't happened yet. I wish the same kind of things on MPW. It didn't happen, remember? So, oh, look at that. Silly little boy. Y'all are like, what the? Yeah, I don't know what to make of this, though. It went really low first, so we'll see. Maybe it doesn't even do this. Maybe we've already come low enough, and we just chop out and leave Friday. I don't know. I really don't know. All I know is that it was probably going to come down here to this pocket. I don't know if it came low enough. Personally, don't think it did, but whatever. If it leaves, it leaves. I'm not going to complain about it. It's really once it jumps this creek. There's a couple here that you can look at, and this is the one that you would want to say, oh, it's going, you know. And until that point, it's probably not really worth this guy right here, because it won't, ultimately anything could happen above that, but it won't go unless it's found support here, and then it should at that point leap back above the other, some kind of motion like that, like an antelope leaping over, or a gazelle leaping over a bunch of fences or something. I don't know. What do gazelles leap over? Rocks? Each other? Get out of my way! We're about to get eaten. Jumps over the other one. People always talk about them jumping, but they're really just running. Like they just jump while they run. They're just like jump, 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 jump. The runs are just jumps. Jump, 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 jump. It's kind of funny. I mean, if you look at them running, that's kind of what it looks like. So really, cheetahs are just like, yeah, and then the gazelle, it tried to jump away from me. It jumped fast, but I was like, what are you doing, man? I might be thinking about deer. It's just weird to me. I had a dog that ran like that. It kind of ran like a bunny rabbit. And it just had this really bizarre, like, hop kind of run. And I'm like, well, to be fair, nobody taught him how to run. And he was fast. He was fast like a rabbit. Cost won't stop. Can't stop, won't stop. GameStop. I mean, it looked like it bonked its head and dropped, so that's a pretty decent little wick. We'll see what happens. Like I said, if it gets above here, you might get up to 30, but it looks to me like it's kind of in this place where it's hitting a resistance that's historically pretty strong. I mean, this is a big deal. It would, in my opinion, just looking at the chart, it's definitely a stronger. It should be a stronger resistance than this one. So we'll see. If it can get over that, you might get to 30. Otherwise, I think you may start to trek back down. It's very, very overbought. So I bet this monthly candle is like really weird. I wonder what I forgot what the other one looked like. I think it was pretty bad. Yeah, there's not really much to say here. It's just kind of a hanging. The monthly, it just looks like it rounds out, like the volume's just kind of rounding out on this kind of pullback period. Is there like a big wick on this? I can't see it. Yeah, it's a little more like a hammer. It's not like a super strong one, but we're just getting started. This is an engulfing buying candle. It would be a massive one if it went up. It'd be really powerful. Well, congratulations on your profits. Oh no, what are you doing? MPW, you doing something that I don't like. What's it doing? It's just consolidating. It's fine. I don't know what it's going to do. It looked like it might have double topped, but it may actually be a lower high. I can't really tell. High of 409, 409, 409. No, never mind. It double topped. And then backed up. So there's a possibility that it can have more downside and still continue. Double topping isn't exactly horrible. Yeah, I suppose that's the cross right there. Kind of talked about this earlier, but you see that yellow cross? The 409 is the center of it, squishy middle. So it just kind of went back to recovering in the middle. So it still hasn't made much of a decision yet. Unfortunately, there's a lot of space. A lot of stuff can happen in a phase B area, and higher lows are fine. This is an M cross here. Jump that creek. It's making the right moves to advance. The next one would be coming up to the top again around that 414 mark. We just haven't gotten there yet. I don't suppose, because of the double top, I don't suppose it has to do that today. Like, we could see down even to retest this, and then maybe tomorrow we come back up. Big maybe. Not tomorrow, but you know what I mean. Friday. Just kind of cool its jets a little bit more. No, you did a really good job, Shaw. Good job. You gotta take profits where you can. I'm not gonna tell you how to trade, but I will say that, like, once you kind of step over that line and you just take your profits, if you're done with it, just be done with it. This could be an SOS on NU. Like, it's better not to look back. Be like the cool guy who's walking away from an explosion and just be like, yeah, I made my money. I'm done. Because looking back can be kind of painful sometimes. Like, you might have a lot of regret if something happens. Because we don't know, you know, like, at the end of the day, if it's a squeeze and it's going like that, you've got some targets that might hit, others that might not. We hit all three here. I mean, those were really big targets, so it's a huge amount of profit. If it goes to 33, you're going to be like slapping yourself. So just I personally would just be like, all right, I'm gonna enjoy my weekend, you know. Just like leave it at that. Be like, yeah, I made money, I don't care, you know. You're not gonna want to don't try to like buy back in a scramble. And that's something that happens on AMC a lot with people, because it'll go up and then they'll be like taking profit and they'll see it bounce and they'll think, oh, it's gonna continue. And a lot of times it's just that second up thrust, and they get trapped here, and then it sells hard off, you know, like really bad. I've learned my lesson enough on that, and I don't trust it. Which has its downfalls. I mean, sometimes I do kind of get out of something too early, thinking that it's gonna pull the rug, and it doesn't. So, anyways, I can't give you a financial advice, but I would give you like friendly advice. I'd just be like, cool, man. Congratulations. Feel good about it. Walk away. Because good or bad, you're going to be like, you know, oh, okay. This could have happened. This could have happened. I don't know. If you guys feel differently, you feel free to share it. But I'm just not a big fan. I think once you've kind of made the commitment of like, all right, I'm done, just be done, you know? That's how I feel about it. I'm like telling myself, like, just let it go, dude. You made your decision. It was good. There was profit. Go rest. Looking to buy between 6 and 10 to hold for years on Veil. Like Vicky Veil, V-A-L-E. Or like Wedding Veil, V-E-I-L. Some of you are like, who's Vicky Vale? She's a reporter lady from Batman. I'm pretty sure Vicky Vale was the first one they had in the Tim Burton movies too. I don't think she was in any of the other ones. Holo? I don't know anything about those stocks. I can only do one new thing at a time. This is weird. Yeah, it looks like it might be about to break down. But this is also like a possible SOS and reaccumulation, which is kind of strange to say. A little bit. It's a shorter day today. I think I'll be done in about 30 minutes. So, I don't know. I don't really like that it pushed high, but it hasn't really lost support until recently. Yeah, I mean, to me, it's a fairly typical, like, cat ear structure. I have to kind of look at... See, that's what I'm saying. I'm not really sure, because it did retreat and then go up higher, but that could be a way of pushing over the top, either to distribute or to then start a reaccumulation. So like you could push over the top here to kind of come back down and reaccumulate. I would just watch, instead of worrying too much about that kind of stuff, I just watch the this trend specifically, which it broke, and then maybe if it's a wedge, it is a wedge. It's a hard one. What is this? I don't know if I like the stock news update person. Can anyone verify if that stock news update guy is actually legit, or are they trying to like cause people to sell or buy? Cost is dumping. Yeah. I just don't know. He keeps pumping like it's not legit. All right. Sorry, guy. All right. I'm just putting him out. I just hit him on the channel. I don't know. That's how you do it. All right. So all right. I just don't see that stuff all the time. I mean, this is a heavy amount of buy-in my opinion. Like, there's a lot going on right here. And I wonder if they're going to try to, again, maybe dip down for liquidity purposes. I'd look at basic retracements to start, maybe from this move. Maybe down to 7. That's a high liquidity zone. It also makes sense because it's the golden pocket on this move, but it also makes sense because it's I think it's the creek. I mean, it's like right there. So if it drops, I would eye 7. Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah. So there's a chance if this breaks down, you go into sort of a reaccumulation low. And all of that would be to give you an opportunity to come above probably whatever creek is left. You're probably going to have a couple here if it does go down. Because I'm just kind of eyeballing it. It's just looking at where the imbalances are, I suppose, in the moves. Seems about right. It looks to me like it failed to advance in one sweeps, and you're kind of just consolidating, but it's, in my opinion, it's kind of lost its momentum. So what remains is either a break back above. I mean, in either case, you're going to jump these creeks, so there's not really anything else to talk about until it does. So if this kind of stays trapped, it's probably going to come down and eventually like hit these lows, and then it'll jump this creek. May even be faster than that. Just based on the way this thing's bought back in before, it could be very quick. Something like this. That's a path forward. I think you could probably argue that that would be a strong way to advance here over time. And then this is where it plays like catch up when it makes like a really big move on like a wave cross. Like there. It's pretty close. Something like that. So that seems likely. Just as a macro, that's what I would say. But if it came back above here, you know, you have a strong chance, again, back above like 15. There's a decent chance it could find some support and just go. So that's over both the creeks and everything. So that's what I would say about Vail. And we'll look at Holo. I don't know what max pain is for AMC this week, but it's probably the same it's been forever, like 450 or something. If it's 5, then that's fine. We can stay at 5. This is a mess. All right. Let me get a time thing. Where is it? Kind of right. Maybe I can go to the daily. Why? What is this? Micro cloud hologram? What does that even mean? So there's kind of like a loose time cycle here. It's a bit ambiguous. Maybe that's kind of where the waves are. It's a tech company. Max is 5 for the next 2 weeks. I think that's just concealing. I think that's just concealing the... I mean, could you imagine we could go up from here to 18 and then come back down in a week? I mean, it's totally possible. That's kind of what happened last time. Pretty sure that weekly candle just got a giant wick, so you could totally end up in a situation with this cost just like dropped through the floor. I mean, it's a penny stock, so you get what you ask for, you know.
So can't you just ask for $99,000?
Yeah, that would be nice. It's in a downward cycle. I don't know how else to read it. You know, I think your next upward cycle based on this doesn't look like it would be...
What is a downward cycle?
Downward, meaning it's heading lows instead of going up.
Isn't that the same thing?
Instead of going up. So you have lows, that's going...
Yeah, but
going down versus going up is not the same thing. You get what you ask for, yeah. That's the wit for you. It's too witty. Run circles around me one day. Okay, that's about as much as I could tell you. I don't really get it. It looks like February, August, February. So maybe August. August, September. You may have some upside. You're asking me to do TA on this. That's kind of a difficult place to be, because this clearly is like a floor that's broken. This is like an up thrust, and then it's just a distribution. So you're looking at this as like a S curve. I'll give it a shot. It looks, I was about to say, it kind of reminds me of that motif we've been talking about, where you have like the bounce, and then you've got a run up, distributed run up, some kind of like cat ear structure, right? And then you've got a drop. So it's not actually that awkward. So it's like into sort of March or something. I think the trick here would be finding a bottom. If it can hold here, this is divergence, so it could have a nice big move if it can hold. It seems like these points are all kind of connected too. And then on the here, I would say it looks a lot like a an M cross. I mean, it's easy to see it dropping again, but I'm just going to do my best. I don't really know what else to do. That seems right. The middle would be here, right, of the wave. So if I'm counting as a middle, it'd be right there. So in terms of like a wave analysis, that would be the center, in which case it's either that or this. Both are possible. However, is that low enough? I don't know, you know. Maybe it's trying to do a 50-50 around this level back here. That's all I can see. There's something around 7 on liquidity as well. It's a little higher on that shelf. So this could be thought of as like the LSPY kind of thing, perhaps. Yeah, I mean, crazy as it sounds, I think we might get a distributive motion back up to 7. It's one of those stocks that you're going to have to wait a while, probably. I think you'll have some pumps, and then we could even see like a lower low later, you know, and then potentially have a big move up to like 7. It's ugly. Like that's already jumped, see? And it looks like it hit the creek. So it's actually in a good spot right now for a potential rebound. I just don't know if that rebound is going to give you very much at first. It might be a very weak kind of upward motion. Depends. I could see this happening like this, and then we're talking about August maybe. I don't know. It seems like all it's doing is selling down, but there's these periods of consolidation where it's flat. This one, I suspect it may actually go really far at first. It may go up to like 2. It may actually be a little more stagnated too. I'm kind of giving it a lot more structure than it probably has. Like it may be a lot more like block, 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 you know, like just flat, weird, bizarre drops, you know, like penny stocks do that kind of stuff. So I'm giving it a lot of structure, but I don't know if I could really accurately say it moves this way. If this were a normal build out, this is how I would expect it to go. Something like that. Either that or like lower, you know, it just depends. Build out low or build out high. This is where I would see it. It's ugly though. Really ugly. You basically, yeah, it's, I mean, somebody said gambling. It's basically gambling. I mean, you could be, frankly, you could be, the way this thing moves, you could be sitting here trying to buy in thinking it's the bottom, and you could have just like a nasty up thrust and then just kind of coast back down until almost August. I mean, there's times where you might think that this is like really bullish and it's not, so. Getting in now might result in like a quick 100% move, but the rest of this is debatable. I think you could see lower lows. Maybe you get one more big push near August or September to 7. And then it's pretty much in the same spot. Like it would then be like a nasty like sell down. I think it would almost do the same thing. So I mean, you could take a shot in the dark and try to average in and see if you could get that, but that's mostly selling volume, so pretty ugly. All right, well, you know, it made a higher high here, so that means that it's pushed above the top here. So that means it's kind of trying, it failed to regain that creek, but it needs to now find a support. So it's not quite the way I wanted it to go. I actually maybe have been right, and maybe it was just fast, but I feel like every time I think that it's not really fast. It's always like slower than I think it is. I'm like, oh, it's going faster. Nah, it's probably just like an intro to this motion. So I'd still kind of keep it the same. But if it builds a support high here and then comes back up, you might have a higher hit instead of dropping low. It's really not that complicated for me. I'm always like thinking about, well, has the creek risen? Yeah, it did. Did it break above it? Yeah, it did. Did it close above it? No, it didn't. And I'm on the 3-minute chart, you know, so you know, like it's a pretty weak push if it can't hold on the 3-minute. There's a decent buy-in. There's a lot of volume here. That's fine. Volume kind of dies weirdly at the top on this pullback, and then one more buy-in. Now it's like a little head and shoulder. It's right there. It's really small. It's teeny tiny head and shoulder right on that mark that we drew earlier. I don't know. If it finds support at 5, it finds support at 5. Did someone already tell me what max pain was? Was it 5 or was it like, you said 5 for like 2 weeks. So. Thanks. I mean, it's a penny stock, so it's one of those things where I think your best bet is to just sort of look at the averages. And I think I got a pretty decent idea that there's some kind of a momentum event. And this would be like a downward portion, and then you might have an upward portion going into September, October. But as far as I can tell, I don't feel like you would go higher than that for now, just because it doesn't look like it would result in accumulation. The only event where this does go up, just to kind of finish this off, is if this generates an M cross that holds, and then you could potentially see it try to go up to the next creek. The way it's set up is very strange, so I really wouldn't know how to chart it. I mean, this would have to be some kind of cataclysm, you know, what is it called? Catalyst type thing, maybe, where, I don't know, something like that. That just doesn't make any sense to me, but because of the split. But I mean, that's part of it. You have to remember the split. So I don't think that's very likely. It's a penny stock. If the technology has a really good use, then it'll be some kind of amazing thing. And if it doesn't, then it's probably going to go bankrupt and get off the market and delist. I mean, that's how most of these kind of go when they start doing this. So, well, it looks like we're going to kind of coast into end of day here. So I think market's about to close, right? Really soon. Yep. So we've got a little bit more time, but it's about to be over. 15 minutes. Yeah, so this makes me kind of happy just watching this potential bottom form on MPW. It looks good. I mean, and you know, nothing's over till it's over. It's already jumped this creek, so at this point, if it were to go lower, I'd expect it later. Maybe Friday it could go down slow. Otherwise, it can potentially start building out now, which is nice. It could be that fast. GME, well, that's good. It's a very efficient retest of the creek there. It definitely dipped low. It hit 2364, which is one of the levels. Actually, it looks really nice. It hit both of those levels, so that's good. High volume too on that. That's good. High volume candle right there. That does mean it went lower than the previous bottom over here, though. So that could indicate a change in momentum. So you got to be careful. But it hit 2364 and it hit 2382. So those are my two marks. And then, yeah, it looks like a hook on the triangle. So this would have to be some kind of like 1, 2, 3, 4 flush in order to continue up. So I would still expect there to be maybe one more push down. If it manages to hold it, I think you're going to advance. And if it doesn't, then this just generates into a hook and you're going to drive low. Even if it drove low, again, just making sure that you keep in mind like where we are. You still don't, you just want to see that creek hold. If it can hold, it's okay. If it can't hold, it's not okay. So my opinion is if it's bullish, it does something like this Friday. And if it's bearish, we probably just lose this little tiny local creek and head low, and I don't know what happens then. We'll see. For AMC, you know, there's really not much to say here. It's kind of generating, again, a little bit of a wave around this creek, and I suspect if it rejects where it seems like it's rejecting, it's going to do so in order to drop lower. So we'll see if it can find support before a new low. Still have in my mind that we might need to come down to about the 493 area. Thus far, the levels have been pretty good, but I don't know, man. We really haven't seen anything build out yet. This is just sort of an auto reaction. There's not much else to say. In a lot of ways, that's probably good. I mean, you don't really want to be in a place where you're kind of worried to sick on 4th of July. So I'm not really that concerned about the drop itself. And frankly, it stayed above the levels that I wanted to stay above. So I think it was much needed. Now look at this. Look at this 15 minutes creeping up like, hey, good to see you, price action. Want to come down and just touch the line a little bit? That was creepy. Let's not do that. Never again. Hey, price action, you looking spicy. Why don't you come sit on me for a little bit? All right, I'm stopping. Don't worry. I'm just hungry and get kind of ridiculous. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe 4 hour. I'm watching Family Guy. I remember that kid, that guy. Anyways, yeah. So I think right here, maybe I don't know if it's going to be that drastically different tomorrow, but maybe if tomorrow's flat, we end up pulling up again the 4 hour a bit. I genuinely think this looks really good though. Like this is kind of what I want to see on a cross up over a creek. A giant rise, lots of buying, huge amounts of buying on this push up and covering of shorts, right? But also just that big push up, pull back. I don't know, man, if we're going to get the rest of this move, but we definitely should be able to get up to 6. Yeah. No, I wasn't trying to do that, but I do remember that character. So this kind of motion, to me, looks fine. I think it looks really good. I don't think it was a good day. Want to look one more time at IWM. Just see where it's landing. So it's green now, but it's below 202. There's definitely a lot of weakness in this setup. Kind of reminds me of that head and shoulder build out that we often see. So I'm thinking we might get one nosedive. I wouldn't be surprised if we gap down on Friday. Y'all are like, head and shoulder? Yeah, but it's like a rising head and shoulder action. And this happens quite a bit when you see like a wind up and unwinding. I don't really understand beyond that why it would do that. You know, and all I know is that when I see that on AMC, I'm usually like, okay, we may be about finished with this overall motion, because this only ever appears on like the right side of an M cross, which is exactly what this is. So it always appears on the right. So you get the left side here, and then the right side. We already knew what this was. We talked about this yesterday. I thought it might be over, but now I'm looking at it, I'm like, no, that's definitely like a whole nother side. So yeah, this is usually something you only get on the right. And then if it's bullish, it just takes off. I mean, there should be a spring. And that actually helps me because I didn't have, these are cross trend lines. They're fine. There's nothing wrong with them. It's just, I didn't have another support line that kind of showed me this, where this could be. No, I don't drink. I'm sober. Never was like an alcoholic, just sobriety. Two years, I think. Something like that. So this right here would give me a good indication of possibility because of this being like the major wave right there. So there's a good chance if this turns bullish that this ends up being met. I'm not saying it's going to happen Friday. I'm just saying like that's highly probable. If Friday's all down, then that would be like, okay, Monday, where is that at? You know? It just depends on if it ends bullish. If it ends bullish, I think, yeah, it could definitely end. Based on the way this is moving, though, it's kind of fast, isn't it? Is that enough time? Maybe. It might happen Friday. There's not really any way to measure it where it doesn't happen Friday, so M1, approach the creek. M2, push the creek and jump the creek. So this actually looks like it's about finished, but it could be that this gives you another advancement and then a backup. And then you could still have a spring. But in our case, the spring might be like really, that's like the only other way I can see this going. So either it just kind of goes and advances here, or you head low. That looks good. We could probably guess too. I'm not sure why I'm making it sound so vague. We probably would know because there should be a mark there. 202. Of course that's the mark. That's one of them though. There should be another one. This guy. Some of you are like, no more lines, please. Yeah, but if this forms a bottom, a support right here, then that's where you could end up having a spring later over here on this side. 201.50. We'll see. Nah, I'm boring. Never done anything weird. Out of a shoe. Drinking out of a shoe. All right. Unless something silly happens in the last 4 minutes, I think we're kind of done. Good job, everybody. Break. Enjoy the day off and the holiday. I hope you guys have a good holiday. If you don't celebrate Independence Day, then just enjoy it anyways, because the market's closed. So take a breather, get your feet in the grass. Unless there's chiggers or something, then don't. But, you know, thanks for hanging out. Tried my best. It was a weird day. Nothing like horrible, just different. We'll see what happens, you know. I think everything's meant to kind of look bad right now, but we've really had a great week. I mean, there's really not much to complain about. On the whole, this has been a really good setup. So GME is a little more speculative, but it's in a possible place of strength. Just needs to kind of maintain support here. You know, IWM is kind of my biggest head scratcher at the moment. I feel like it's changing in ways I don't like, but maybe again it's just because of the change of the quarter. It's the first few days, so we'll see. Thanks guys, hope you have a good one. We'll talk to you later.